Stevie Damman was born on December 15, 1952. His family was originally from Iowa, but in 1955 they were living in Long Island, New York, where his father was stationed in the U.S. Air Force. The family consisted of Stevie's parents, Jerry and Marilyn, Stevie, and baby sister Pamela. Stevie was blonde-haired and blue-eyed, had a small scar under his chin and a healed fracture to his left arm, and was being treated for a growth to his kidney. Note: I couldn't find information about whether the growth was benign or malignant, or what type of treatment his was receiving. Disappearance. On Halloween of 1955, October 31st, Marilyn took Stevie and Pamela with her to a store only a block and a half from their home to buy a fresh loaf of bread. Stevie was nearly 3 years old, and Pamela was 7 months old. Marilyn left Stevie and Pamela, who was in a baby stroller, outside the store while she did her shopping. While this may sound shocking for 21st century years, it was a common practice at the time. My own grandmother would leave my infant aunt outside of their supermarket in the Bronx in the late 40s because it was easier than having to navigate the store with an unwieldy old-style pram, and wouldn't think a thing of it. Marilyn said that there were several other strollers outside the store at the time. Stevie was standing beside the stroller, eating a bag of jelly beans, and she told him to be good, and that she would be right back. When Marilyn came out 10 minutes later after buying her bread, she discovered that the stroller and both children were not where she had left them. Pamela was found, unharmed and still inside her stroller, just a few blocks away, but Stevie was not with her. It is unlikely that Stevie would have pushed the stroller to that location by himself, as it would have required him to go through traffic and go over rough ground while pushing a large stroller, something that would have been highly challenging, if not impossible, for a child who wasn't quite 3. Marilyn also described Stevie as a mama's boy, who was not usually one to wander off. Marilyn was so distraught that she had to be taken to the hospital to be treated for shock. Large search parties with about 2,000 volunteers, including firefighters, police, Boy Scouts, and airmen from the same base Stevie's father was based at, searched diligently for him, both in the area around the store and wider out, including parks, golf courses, and waterways. The only witness statement I could find comes from someone who claims to have seen 6 people pick up a boy from outside the store. No trace of Stevie has ever been found. After the disappearance, Jerry, Marilyn, and Pamela eventually moved back to the Midwest. Jerry and Marilyn divorced in 1957, and both of them eventually remarried and had children with their new spouses. In November 1955, a few weeks after Stevie disappeared, his parents received a series of 3 ransom notes demanding money: $3,000, $10,000 and $14,000, for Stevie's safe return. However, these notes turned out to be a dead end. They were traced back to a student at Queens College in New York City, who in fact had nothing to do with Stevie's disappearance and didn't know his whereabouts, but was just an opportunist trying to make money off the desperate parents, who had actually attempted to comply with the demands at first. In 1957, the body of a young boy, malnourished and abused, was found in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This boy somewhat resembled Stevie, and they had scars in the same places. However, the boy in the box didn't have a heel broken arm like Stevie did, and their footprints didn't match. In 2003, the Philadelphia boy was ruled out through DNA. He was later identified as Joseph Sorelli. In 2009, a Michigan man named John Barnes came forward and said that he believed that he was Steven Damman. He said that he felt that he had never really fit in with the family who raised him. His father, Richard Barnes, said that John was born in August 1955, just 2 months before Stevie went missing, and that the accusation that he was actually Stevie was a bunch of foolishness. DNA tests later proved that John Barnes was not Stevie Damman. What happened to Stevie? Stevie seems to have vanished into thin air, his trail ending outside the Long Island store where he disappeared. He could have been taken by someone who wanted to raise him as their own or sell him into adoption, but he seems a bit of an unusual target considering his infant sister, who couldn't walk, talk, and wouldn't have memories of a previous life, was right there and would have been much easier to take than a toddler. Or someone could have been trying to take both of them, realized trying to wrangle a toddler and an infant was too hard, and abandoned Pamela for whatever reason while taking Stevie. He could have been taken by a pedophile who focused on boys, and wasn't interested in girls, thus leaving Pamela behind. Another possibility is that even though it was unlikely, maybe Stevie was able to push his sister's stroller some distance before getting bored or finding it too hard, abandoning it, and then got into some sort of accident where his body just wasn't found. A last possibility, and one that is most often the case when a child goes missing, is that someone close to him was responsible. This video is about 15 years old, and is of an elderly woman who had been a neighbor of the Dammans at the time Stevie went missing. It's a bit hard to hear, since she's soft-spoken, but she says that they would often hear Stevie screaming and crying from inside his home, which was very upsetting to her children, and that whenever Stevie had an accident in his diaper, he was made to wash it out, even though he was only 2. She also witnessed an occasion where Marilyn whacked the heck out of Stevie on a playground, to the extent that it upset another witness so badly she started to cry and had to leave the playground. Stevie had a healed broken arm, which could also be an indicator of abuse. Her husband reported this to the Air Force chaplain, and a few days later, he was called into a meeting with, it seems, the chaplain and Stevie's father, and was essentially told to mind his own business. She said about a week after Stevie went missing, she started smelling a sweet, sick smell that a friend who was a nurse said was the smell of a dead body. One of Marilyn's friends told her that she hadn't seen Stevie for a few days before he went missing. This woman and some of the other neighbors thought that Stevie might be buried under a parkway that was being built at the time. If her story is true, then it may be that Stevie never was at the store that day, and had in fact died from abuse at the hands of his parents, and the kidnapping was just a cover story, and his body was later disposed of, perhaps under the parkway that they were building. Both of Stevie's parents are deceased. His mother died in 2013, and his father in 2020. Stevie isn't mentioned in his mother's obituary, and neither Stevie nor Pamela are mentioned in their father's. If he is still alive, Steven Damman would be a 72-year-old man with blue eyes, a scar under his chin, a birthmark on his left calf, and a healed fracture to his left arm. He may believe that he was adopted, or may not even know that the family he was raised in is not his birth family. My thoughts. Statistically, I know that whenever a child goes missing or is murdered, the perpetrator is usually someone known to them, typically a parent or other caregiver. Stevie's previously fractured arm as well as the neighbor's account indicate that there may have been abuse happening in the home, although I would be interested to know if there was ever an official report made, or if it was just to the Air Force chaplain. There's also a notable lack of witnesses for what you think would be at least a somewhat busy area. I think that it's likely that Stevie was never at the store that day, and that he was killed at home and his body disposed of. During that time, it seems the instructions given to the neighbor was the norm: mind your own business, I'll parent my children how I want to, etc. Hushing up even horrific abuse was common, and sadly I lean towards Stevie having been a victim of this.